Good evening, and welcome back to the Not So Perfect Bigfoot Show. Tonight, I have a fellow North Carolinian, and you know I love my North Carolina people. We are here tonight with Rick Relis. Rick has a incredible bio. He is a BFRO investigator. He has retired 37 years from a professional business. He has traveled the world multiple times. In 2010, he had a sighting with one of his friends in northern Wisconsin. Wisconsin seems to be a hotbed. He
hmm
also had, very much so. He also has his hands in conferences. He talks at conferences. He's been involved in several expeditions. He has his own merch. Well, he's a partner in merch. I know Sasquatch. And you can find that on Say that for me, Rick. I always get it wrong. Ecstasy.
Yeah, that was almost. It's
Etsy.
Etsy, and it's I know
Etsy.
Squatch.
Yes, I know Squash. Esty.
Right.
I got it. You're a musician too, and you wrote a song called Woodbooger Walk, and it is on Spotify.
Yeah, you can get it on Spotify or iTunes or iHeartRadio, Deezer, Prime, Amazon. Just look up Just Rick. So that's what I
And you
go
are
as because I'm a
just
musician too.
yes,
Just
you
Rick,
are. I did a little stalking on you, sir.
and
Um,
that's I know Squatch right there.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, well, go
That
ahead.
is awesome. So you wrote a book too, The Guide to Bigfoot Stick Structures. It is in its fourth edition. That is
Yes.
incredible.
hmm
That is,
Yeah.
and that takes.
Yeah. It's a field guide, so it's. I probably have a copy here, but it is a yeah, I do. So it's a field guide. Looks like this, and you can put it in your backpack if you're out in the woods. So I kind of made it for that. But it's got actual images and pictures in it of different stick structures that Bigfoot
It's
would
pretty
make
cool.
in the woods too. And there's usually something in there for perspective. I have them into different categories. I've also got some ground glyphs in the back too, and these happen sometime in expeditions. They'll leave glyphs around the tents and things too. So I've categorized them. They drop into different categories, but curiously, regardless of geography, they seem to look the same. There's a lot of different ones out there that they reproduce and they're the same look. So they have some language meaning for Bigfoot.
So how do I get a autographed copy for me and my friend Philip Palmer? I would be more than happy to buy them, sir.
I'm more than happy to send it to you, but just send me your address where you want me to send it, and I will be glad to sign and send that to you.
Well, I have a friend named Philip Palmer in Savannah, Georgia, and he is really big on the glyphs. That's
Oh,
his
really?
basis. Yes,
Nice.
and he would love that. And he's a good man. He's a real good man. You also advised on some episodes of Finding Bigfoot.
I did.
That's
Yeah, I
incredible.
did. On three different episodes. One was in the UP of Michigan when they were up there in Schoolcraft County, an area called Mead Creek. So I advised in that one because the four gentlemen that they portrayed in the episode that they recreated, I was one of them. And I was unable to make it on the show. There was another one in northern Wisconsin, and I was on an expedition. I've been on a few up there, and I was on one there where there were some Class A sightings. And so I consulted on that. The conference called me to advise on that. And then one for Northeast Iowa. And you wouldn't think you'd say Iowa, it's all cornfields, there's no Bigfoot, but Northeast Iowa is very, very active.
Um, they got a lot of corn too, so that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And
How
they got a
about
lot of valleys. They got a lot of valleys. The topography slopes up and down and rolls. And especially Northeast, you come to these canyons and they have, 7,000 acre park kind of thing, state park, but you go down into the canyon and there's activity. There's families of Sasquatch and those things. I did a number of expeditions up there and found it very very active.
so you're a musician? You
Yes, I
have
am.
you have experienced Bigfoot. You
hmm
wrote a book, a guide, and you also wrote articles for the New York Post. And let make sure I get this right. Um, Bold Life magazine.
Yeah, Bull Life magazine gets around Western North Carolina too, and they interviewed me. Did a whole piece on, my interest in this and how I'm a investigator for this part of the world. And when witnesses send in an encounter to the BFRO, I would be, one of the people. Certainly here, Western North Carolina. I get over into the center of the state a bit too, but I would follow up and contact the witness, try to see if. A lot of times, witnesses will file a report. They won't want to talk further, but when they do, and if I can, I will get out to their location. But I always talk to them, try to vet it out, make sure it's legit. And the ways and we could talk about this, but you see similarities in reports and behaviorally with Bigfoot. So, I look for those kinds of things to make sure it's not a hoax.
Well, before we go any further, let me say my monitor is going out. So if you see me go to Avatar, I would rather go to Avatar than for to keep. Well, I am a North Carolina girl through and through, but I just love any kind of experiences in anything in North Carolina. My favorite area is to go out into the swamps of Robinson County, the Lumber River, and all of that. But before we get into that, when I was picking the title for your episode, I come up with a little bit of everything because you have done a little bit of everything, and I think the road you've taken has been pretty incredible. But what I don't know, and just kind of stalking you. And Don Tarr, a mutual friend, recommended you, and I love me some Don. He said you're a really great, solid guy. What was life like growing up? Give us a little insight or a snapshot of your life, and kind of lead us up to your encounter. Just give us a snapshot of who you are and what shaped you.
Sure. I grew up in upstate New York, Albany area. So about 2.5 hours north New York City. Upstate New York is very, very much forested, rural, a lot of dairy farms, a lot of rolling hills, a lot of mountains. Not dissimilar to this part of the world. I love Western North Carolina because it's mountainous. But I grew up in the Adirondack Mountains. My dad was a big fisherman. I did a lot of fishing with him on a regular basis. I was a Boy Scout, did a lot of camping, a lot out in the woods. I used to get out trout fishing every spring with my dad all the time. So I grew up doing a lot of that sort of thing. Loved upstate New York. Still go back. Was there a few weeks ago up in the Lake George region, and it's beautiful, beautiful country. Very a lot of lakes, clear, deep lakes, a lot of mountains. Beautiful, beautiful. Even southern New York, when you get in the Catskills and everything, it's gorgeous. And if you read the reports, BFRO reports, there's a lot of activity in parts up there because people think New York and New York City, and the state is very big and it's very mountainous, very forested.
I hate to say this, and I've said this before, but as a North Carolina girl, some of the best moonshine I ever had come from upstate New York.
That's hilarious. That's funny.
That's best really blackberry moonshine. Matter of fact, I got orders for it. So,
that's great.
So eventually, you were out in northern Wisconsin. Can you go into what happened with that?
Yeah, so I moved around a bit in my professional life. I moved up the ladder and the company I was with, and I moved around a bit. So I've lived in Georgia, Virginia, Connecticut, Wisconsin, obviously Tennessee. So I've been in a few places. I've lived in a few places. Spent a number of years in Wisconsin. And back in 2010, I was driving across the northern part of the state with a business associate, and we saw something run across the road in front of us. It was late in November, between 4 and 4:30, so it was dusk. Gets kind of dark then, misty rain, and this thing came across. I very much remember the two legs. And we're in probably an hour and a half northwest of Green Bay. So that's, gently rolling hills, very wooded. Wisconsin has a lot of lakes, a lot of gently rolling hills and things like that. But we saw this thing go across the road, and the business associate I was with kind of dismissed it and thought it was an elk or a moose. And I was very sure it was on 2 legs, which drove me crazy. And it was kind of a reddish brown color. But I dove into it, started to really research, look into it, and found some reports. BFRO found one that was similar to the creature I saw. Got involved with the BFRO, went on expeditions. Fast forward, I've been doing it ever since. I had a research area in Wisconsin I went into on a regular basis. I would gift and leave food, and had a regular dialogue with these things. They'd knock when I showed up to put the apples up on a tree stump. I'd knock when I left, or they'd make whoop noises. Whoop. We have shirts that say whoop. See that? That's one of our shirts.
I like that.
I'll have to get you one of those. But
I appreciate
that. Well, send me your address. I'll send you a goodie bag. But I mean, whoop is a noise they will make. It's an acknowledgement type noise. And if they know who you are, see, once they know that you know that they're real kind of thing, everything changes. And, I had that kind of relationship with them in a couple areas up there, and I'd go in and I always announce myself, do a knock on the way in, kind of talk to them and leave things, but they'd whistle, whoop, and come around. I had some encounters 3, 4 in the morning while I was out in the area I had research on, and they'd be around. You could hear them. I'd be trying to count how many there were.
Wow.
I remember one time I had a guy I did some research with me, and he thought there were 6 of them. I thought it was possibly 8, but you could see the shadows all around us, and they took kind of military position all around us, if you will. And but they're nothing threatening. They never did anything, at least in the research area I went into all the time. It was part of there's the Wisconsin area has forest that moves all the way up and down. It follows something called the Ice Age Trail. It's glacial. And so the topography's got a lot of deep bowls, eskers, and drumlins and things. And so I was in the Kettle Moraine Forest. And I've seen, actually, there's a gentleman does some research now, and he does some filming in that area. But I knew it like the back of my hand for years. I was in there on a regular basis. And I had reports in there that I followed up with, some really good ones, too. I had a hunter that, there's a lot, deer hunting is very big in Wisconsin. But they had, killed a deer, put it in the back of the truck. We're going back in the woods and saw one of these things come along, just grab the deer out of the back of the truck and take off.
Wow.
I mean, that's a very clear and distinct sighting, that sort of thing. I had another in the southern part of the northern unit of the Kettle Moraine, and just got in a regular route on his way home. One of these things is standing alongside the road, So he knew the topography, knew the area, had a very clear description of it. So, I had some very interesting cases up in that part of it. When you say Wisconsin, it's snow and cold half of the year and everything. Well, there's Bigfoots there. There's Bigfoots all across. I think there's a lot more Bigfoots out there than people realize.
2 things I'm really interested in, and that's behavior, and I have a little bit of interest in the nesting sites. But 2 things you said. When they know, you get signs and signals and vocals. 2 questions. First, how long did it take you to build up that rapport? And B, when you say tactical, I think they are more tactical than most people with training, I know. And it seems like it's, whether it is something they acquired for survival or something, that's their backyard. They know the land. And
right.
I guess surrounding you, they're going to say, well, if you're good, you can stay. If you're not, you're not leaving. I
Right.
don't know. So.
Yeah. So let me address a couple of those things. Well, so one directly, it is an instant. You don't just walk in the woods and there's a Bigfoot, and all the noises and things you see in the woods are not Bigfoot. Typically, you're going to want to go to a spot, if you're researching like myself, where there had been activity around, sightings, road crossings, sightings at a campground, sighting. The typical things are peeking around a tree, looking at people because they're curious, at a fire, at a campsite, or they get in a dumpster, or they are, coming around mischievous around houses, or they're going to follow the food sources. They're going to follow deer paths, that sort of thing. Hunters might encounter. I had a number of hunters in Wisconsin that encountered them. Had one father son, and they got on some private land that hadn't been hunted in a number of years, and sure enough, they run into Bigfoots, and the Bigfoots are trying, to intimidate them, push them out. Of course, I talked to the father and son. I said, well, nobody's been in there for a long time. They've taken it over. It's theirs now. There's some swamps around that area, but there's never one of them. They're always in family groups, and they had pretty much settled in and taken the area over for themselves. And now you show up with your guns ablaze and you're going to hunt deer, and guess what? They don't necessarily want you around. So they push trees over behaviorally. They do a lot of the same things, push trees over, try to intimidate, your howls and whoops, throw rocks, throw logs. And a hunter is not used to that, doesn't know what it is. And all of a sudden this is happening. The boogeyman's after him, sort of thing. They go running out of the woods. I've talked to more than one hunter who said, I'm never going back in the woods again, kind of thing. I've never been scared of anything. I've spent my whole life in the woods, and I know all the sounds, and I know what bears are, and all that kind of thing. Okay, that's great. But you're never really prepared for, Sasquatch when they do come around, and they're not singular creatures. I think they have social order. I think they're in families and groups. They watch out for each other. I've been around them lots of times, and in my experience, if they've got you looking over here, you better look over there, because they're ping-ponging your attention back and forth all the time. So in answer to your question about how long it taken me to build up some kind of trust, I follow the Native American advice, which is always treat them with respect. And so go into an area where there had been some activity, announce yourself as number one. Number two, get to a spot where you can just sit and contemplate, and they wonder what you're there for. Maybe you leave some apples or pears. They like pears. Leave them so it's not obvious a raccoon would get them. I used to take a large stick, 10 feet, 15 feet, put it up in the air with a bag hanging out of it with some apples, lead it up in a tree, that kind of thing. So it wasn't easy to get to. And I said, these are for you. Have a nice day. A beautiful part of the woods here. This is your home, not mine. Thank you for letting me be here. I'd talk to them, and I'd leave. And you laugh, you say, it sounds crazy. And maybe they don't. I think they understand intent. They could tell
energy.
Yeah, right. You're not a hunter. You're not a threat. And you repeat the pattern. So maybe you do it every week. You do a couple times a week where you go in and be unassuming. And once in a while you get a negative vibe. Well, maybe they're giving you a little zapping energy to just see what you're all about. You're not deceptive. But after a while, all of a sudden you come in, the apples are gone. Sometimes they'd exchange things. There'd be a couple of sticks and like an axe they would leave, or they'd put a rock on top of the stump where the bag was. Or you arrive, and as I said earlier, the cacophony of sound starts, whoop, and whistle, and knock, back and forth. I used to drag my wife out on some of this stuff during the day too. She'll never go at night, but she'd go with me, and I'd have her in an area. And a lot of the Wisconsin trails are along ridges, even though you're in the woods, because they go around the outskirts of kettles and drumlins and things. I'd be down in one looking at stick structures or trying to figure out, some of the topography. Maybe if they had done some things, put some X's up in the woods or whatever. She'd be, I just heard one just knocked down behind me on the other side, that kind of thing. What's going on? So I'm like, yeah, they're communicating. But so, it was always fun for me to get her in an environment where she'd experience. I'd bring friends with me at different times, things, but that didn't seem to matter. They never, once they'd get used to you, and this could take, months, sort of, once they'd get used to you being around, realize you're not a threat, they'll knock right back. They'll talk. And I always tell people say, because if you watch the shows, even Expedition Bigfoot, it makes for good TV to go out there and amplify and turn up and call blast howls and all that sort of thing. But that's not really what you do. In research, you get more with, you really get more with sugar than you do with vinegar, kind of thing. So if you're there, if they knock back at the same level, same volume as them. If they do a whistle or a whoop, I always try to do it back the same way and mimic them. They'll mimic you.
What is a turn off? Go ahead.
What's that?
What is a turn off to them? What do they totally reject and it just ticks them off?
They don't like loud howls and screams. I don't, and first of all, you don't know what you're saying. I've been screamed at by these things, blood curdling right next to me. And you take the advice and leave. But I don't think it's right to be doing it. You watch the shows and they're howling and howling in the distance and all that sort of thing. I'm not the biggest fan. I think that's a turnoff for them. I don't think they like that. I'm not a big fan of doing garbled language, although I've heard the Sierra sound type thing very close to me. There are two females talking to each other. I've heard males talking to each other, and I don't try to mimic that either. I think that's a turnoff. What you don't know what you're saying, so don't do it. And I don't think loud, banging, clanging metal sounds or hard knocks, swinging baseball bats at trees. I don't think that works that well. Now, I'll knock and really loud sometimes, but if I hear one knock at me in the distance and I want to let them know I'm there, I'll do it. But I'm not running around trying to out decibel them. I don't think that's the right approach. So those are turnoffs. I don't like. Obviously, guns are a turnoff. Tell you things I like. The reciprocal of that is musical. So I'll play harmonicas. I have a good researcher friend of mine, Kevin Llewellyn, who's up in Washington. I was with him last year in Tennessee. He had an ocarina. An ocarina is a small, round, gourd type of instrument. He was playing that, and they loved that. I mean, after he got done, they all sighed in the woods. Oh, they thought it was great. So that works. Harmonica, I've had to mimic harmonicas right back at me. So if I'll play a little something, the middle register of the harmonica or something little, and I'll hear them right back. They really like that. I was playing out with a group once on a bridge in the woods, and we stopped, and I stopped playing it, and we were going to go. And I said to them, if you don't want us to leave, let us know, because they were responding positively. All of a sudden, a rock came flying out of the woods, landing in the water right near us, and that was as much as to say, no, don't go anywhere.
Wow.
So sometimes they will. So I like musical. I'll give you another is Native American music. If you get you can get that on Spotify, you can get that elsewhere too. And the flute, play that through a speaker, bring a Bluetooth speaker. That's a great way to go. I like to do that. I have an Irish flute. I play that often. I think that works pretty well.
So
lights.
you play a couple. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no. Well, light. I was going to say visually. If you got like a string of lights that are battery operating and twirl that around, or glow stick, a little bit of that is okay. If they're around, they're around and they're observing, you can do things like that.
So you play a variety of instruments.
Yeah, I do. I grew up a drummer, and I play 6 and 12 string guitar, acoustic and electric, harmonica, mandolin. So a few different things that I make noise on. But I don't make a turn off to them as anything aggressive. If you make aggressive noises, I don't think that really works that well. I'm not a big fan of that, yelling at him. Although he's passed away now, but I had a good friend in northern Georgia that he had a dialogue with him, and he'd yell at him, and it was, hey, buggers, I know you're out there. He went to a certain area all the time, and he'd sleep out there. He'd put a hammock up in the woods and sleep. They'd come around and rock him in the hammock, and he'd throw tennis balls and down into a ravine in the woods, and they'd bring him back up to him, and he'd be there in the morning when he woke up. So he had a good,
Wow.
he had a good dialogue with him where he could do that. But I've never done a lot of it. That was unique.
So he played fetch with Bigfoot's what you're saying.
He did. Oh yeah, he did quite often. I mean, he showed me it was crazy. So I think that's how you get a trust with them, is just to do the same thing, not be too overt and braggadocious about it, too imposing. Be sensitive, be polite to them if they're around. If they don't want you around, like I mentioned the hunters before, they'll let you know. I mean, the tree's going to get pushed over an area. When we're out in the woods doing things at night, we still follow the same kind of rules. Red lights, not white lights. I've more than once been with someone who's turned on a white light, lit up the canopy of trees above when they've been closed. And I'm telling you, the log is coming flying through the woods after that, or the tree is being pushed over. That's, they don't like that. So you got to understand, there's a little bit of protocol communication wise with these things that it is wise to follow.
So you can go from really having a good rapport to them to they can be extremely aggressive. And I am one of those people that do believe people have gotten hurt and killed by them, but I wondered about the boundaries they have crossed because they will set boundaries with you.
Yeah.
It's,
And I think any of the, again, I think the folks that get in a bad way with these things, got to look at yourself first. That's to say, you can't broad brush behavior for all Bigfoots. I think, like people, you can't do that. People, there's good people and there's not so good people.
I agree.
And I think the same thing with Bigfoots. Very, very, very much. They have different personalities and different makeup. And I regard them as forest people, not like an undiscovered ape of the woods. I think these things have got as much in common with human beings as they do with anything else. And so we shouldn't just describe the same characteristics emotionally, behaviorally, aggressiveness, etc. We can't just say, well, they're all this.
I agree.
You got to be prepared a little bit. And but I always look, cause effect. What happened there? If I have a witness with a report, and it's aggressive, then I'm typically trying to figure out what went on with that.
Is it usually like land clearing or encroaching on forests that, like you said, the hunters have not been in forever? They got comfortable in an environment, and then all of a sudden you got hunters there discharging firearms and taking their food source.
Yeah, so that's a very good. So encroachment, I never actually thought of that as a word. Just to use, thank you for that. I'll probably use that in the future. But encroachment is probably one of the biggest things. You're on their land, you're in their space, or you happen upon, maybe they cross that same piece of forest between 12 and 2 every morning, a.m., and all of a sudden you're out there, and they don't want you around, or a hunter with a gun kind of thing. If they don't want you around, they're going to let you know. I mean, they won't be bashful. Let's face it, they're a heck of a lot bigger than we are. But if they think we're harmless and they're just curious why we're there and what we're doing, then we could be entertainment for them too. But you need to be careful. If you get out, I always tell people on expeditions, we take groups out, and I always will tell people, if you get an uneasy feeling when you're out in the group, you got a duty to tell the group something's wrong, because they can single an individual out in a group and give them the heebie-jeebies. They'll zap you. I've been zapped a bunch of times. It's not fun.
So, for the sake of your opinion and your research have taken you, forest people, we'll call them forest people.
Mm-hmm, sure.
I want to get into the zapping in a moment. I made a little note right there to go back to that. What would be the difference between forest people and feral people? Because we get a lot of feral people of Appalachia.
So, one of the things about researching Bigfoot, it's always, and this is going to sound kind of paranormal to me, I don't know. I think once you cross it through the realm of these other type things, coincidences seem to happen more and more. You get coincidences happen. I can't figure it out. So just last Saturday, I was at a habituation site. I've got a family that's got property up near Linville Gorge. There you go, in North Carolina. You know where that is. And I was having lunch with them because I walked the property with them and was reviewing some of their most recent activity. I'm going to get up there again a night pretty soon. They've got ongoing activity. And they're finding out some of the people around them. They got 5 acres and they're finding out around. Anyway, we're having lunch, and they brought up and started talking to me about feral people. And you just brought it up. And so I've gone years without talking about feral people with anybody categorically, and now it's twice in 3 days. That drives me crazy about this, this subject matter. It's like stuff like this happens all the time. I can't figure out the coincidence. Anyway, there's a lot you do hear about them in Appalachia. You do. I've done a little bit of research on this. I think the whole Tennessee wild man thing has got something to do with feral people, because their descriptions are typically along those lines, more like Neanderthal, where I think Bigfoot is not a feral person. Sometimes you get descriptions of them that are hairless to a degree, or long stringy hair, but you get malnourished looking, that sort of thing. And I don't know what that is, unless it's just a variety of them that's not in a good way. But I think the typical Bigfoot, 7-8 foot tall, 600 pounds, arms down, hands down to their knees kind of thing, no neck, no slope in the neck. That type, that's Bigfoot to me. That's a different thing than feral people.
Feral people would be more, along the lines, I would assume, like no hair, their genetics are more like ours, even though Bigfoot would have similar genetics, not exactly the same. And here comes Swamp Kitty. She has taken out the camera a time or two, but you know what? I got this. She like that. So, so I get that part, but it seems to come up like when I'm, going through looking for a show idea or something. It seems like feral people come up with Bigfoot over and over again. So I wanted to put that question out there. Zapping. What have been your experiences with zapping, and why do you think it occurs?
So, I think you had mentioned early on, maybe before we got in the air, that, sometimes you have discussions with folks about physical attributes and evidence it's physical, and other times talking about more woo type things, which are.
Woo's a bad word, I understand that.
Yeah, well, I'm all right with it. It doesn't bother me. To me, it just means, things that we can't physically explain right now, but it's all evidence, so I don't want to dismiss it. Bigfoot somehow have an ability to manifest energy, grab energy, do things with it. Because we routinely will have GoPros and recorders, Tascam recording, nice, good recording equipment, just go dead around them, walkie-talkies, drain out, cell phones drain out, meters that we're using to pick up and measure EMF, any of that kind of thing, radio frequency, different tools we use, and they'll go dead or get charged. I've seen it vice versa too. So if they have an ability to manipulate and draw on or use energy like that, then they certainly can make the hair in the back of your neck stand up if they want to. And if they don't want you around an area and they do that, I'll give you a zapping, we call it. You'll know it. A lot of times the alpha male or female in the group, a group of 6, you're out in the woods, you come into an area where they are, all of a sudden you start to hear them and moving around. If they don't want you there, the alpha person typically in the group will get the zapping. And I've been that person. I've had it happen to, another, once it was I had a college kid with me, who was about 6'6", and he got zapped. And I knew what was happening because he was in front and taller than the rest. He got, all of a sudden, was very, very, uneasy. So what does it feel like is the next question. Well, if you get an energy blast or something, well, I had one of these things happen last fall on an expedition I was on, and I'm telling you, I felt like I was with a group of about 6, and it hit me first because we had activity around, but it felt like something sonically hit my ear. All of a sudden, the side of my head, my ear, and everything was just ringing right off the hook, and I felt very uneasy too. I've had it feel other times it's happened. I've had it feel like fight or flight. Almost nauseous, dizzy. I've had it feel like electricity, where if you put a flat-headed screwdriver in an electrical socket, I've had it feel like that, where it was radiating all through you. I've seen people get knocked down from it. So if they want to take and hit you at a ball of energy or a burst of energy to get you out of an area, they can do it. I can't explain how they do that. I don't think it's us as humans all of a sudden manifesting some biological anomaly that we get sick and fall down just because we're scared. It's because it's situational. Sometimes it's selective. It can be an individual or individuals, and it can be targeted. They can pick a person out of a group and hit them with it. I was with a group years ago. I've told the story and some other, and there were 5 of us, 1 female, the 4 guys in the group all got it. We were walking pitch black. The female, she did not get it. And we had them around us. We had activity. We had done some things. We were playing some rock music and had different like strobe lights on and things. They don't like strobe lights and they don't like rock music. So, but the 4 guys, we all got zapped. And I mean, it stopped us dead in our tracks. It was, and she got nothing. So I've seen it before like that too. So I think they're the instrument of this. They're the ones that are doing it. But when they're doing it, you got to pay attention to it. My advice: if you're getting zapped, the hell out of there.
It could be also heart racing, like you're losing your breath, your heart's racing pretty.
Mm-hmm.
I've had that happen, but I didn't know about the zapping thing. But that was in Varner, North Carolina.
Okay.
Right next, we had perfect environment, blueberry field,
Mm-hmm.
the river, pig farm.
Yeah.
And she had that's how I met my best friend. So zapping is something. If you're not familiar with it and you're sitting there and you're fishing, you could think you're having a heart attack, or some people could say it's their sixth sense kicking in, get out of here. That's when that would be them setting boundaries. What would you say are the most common boundaries they set with people when they're cohabitating on land with someone?
Well, and I've got two situations I monitor pretty closely now. I got actually a third. Two of them are in North Carolina. One is in Tennessee. But you've got to establish sort of let's say you've got cleared property, it's been clear cut or it's grassland up to the woods. They're in the woods, mountain behind, you're on the land or whatever. You've got to let them know. All right, woods are yours, land is mine, house is mine, it's off boundary for you. It's not, that's my boundary. The woods is yours physically, you can stay in the woods, that sort of thing. You've got to establish some, because, and again, whether they understand English or not, if you can convey that, their boundaries are typically for us, don't get in my face on my food, line. If they're, this is a deer path I go on all the time sort of thing, or I'm going to help myself to your vegetable garden or your apple tree. And your place I was at the other day, they'd taken the peaches off the tree. The guy says to me, we were over in an area where he sees them standing on the property. And we're looking, you could see where it's all flattened out and a little bit of a holler and tree branches and things hanging over a mountain laurel. And they're peeking out of there looking at the house. And he told them they could have all the peaches on one of the trees, but leave the other tree alone. So guess what? They're taking all the peaches off the one tree. The other tree right next to it's fine. And you look in the area where they're sitting there watching the house and there's peach pits. And I mean, it's crazy. If you can establish these, that's yours, this is mine, but they have this crazy sense of equivalency and almost in the woods, they see order. Maybe we don't, autistically almost. And I haven't figured it out, but they're very much on this is mine, that's yours, I'll take. They'll never take everything. Even if they raid the chicken coop, they're going to take a little bit and then go. They come around the house. If there's something they can get food with, they'll take some, but not all. They do the same thing with campers all the time, too. They don't pick the cooler up and carry it into the woods. They'll take little things off the table here and there and go. Maybe leave something. It's odd how they do that. Maybe they think they're deceiving us. We don't notice them, but they'll do that all the time. Of course, we blame everything on bears, and it's not all bears.
If you take everything, I guess leaving some behind, you feel like you're not leaving a trace, and you can come back for seconds.
Yes, right, and we're predictable. I mean, they watch us and see what we do. I had this one research guy in Wisconsin I used to deal with, and he said, you want to see these things? He said, I would go to any of the campgrounds that are surrounded by woods, and I'd sit at the dumpster on, Sunday night after everybody's left over, and I'd just sit there overnight and wait. Hey, he's probably right. I mean, that's what they're going to do. They're going to, they've been seen getting in dumpster diving all the time. If it's easy to get to food, they're going to get to it.
You said earlier about the dumpsters. Do you get a lot of reports in urban areas?
That's a great question. I wouldn't say a lot. Had a real interesting one down in Alabama a couple of years ago, and they had reached out, and I talked to them. I didn't get to the location, but long story short, I had a good dialogue with them. There's this area up against a park. There was a Subway shop and a convenience store and things that were right there, but right up against the woods at the edge of a park near a river. And they'd gotten in the habit of, they were throwing out, discarding the waste from the Subway shop, which is food. And the Bigfoots are coming to it, on a regular basis, just taking the stuff. But they knew it wasn't bear. There's no bear in the area, but they knew it wasn't either. And something was literally taking it right away, taking the bags right away, never to come back. But and there was some sightings of them around that park. But they got, again, familiarity. They're great observers. They'll watch us and they'll come get the food if they can and take it and go. I had a report in my neck of the woods in Hendersonville a couple of years ago, and it was a work site, and workers were Spanish. They would bring food, and they would bring them and store them like sandwiches and things in pockets of some of the clothing that they put all the clothing in the same place. Then they're up on a roof and they're working all day and stuff. Well, Bigfoots, I guess, in the woods observed this and kind of knew after a while by watching them come down off the roof and go get the food out of the pockets of the coats that were all together. But there was food in there. And so one day off the roof, they're looking down, and here's the Bigfoot comes out of the wood, going through all the clothes, taking all the sandwiches and all the pockets, and every chimichangas, whatever else they had in there, takes them all out and runs in the woods with them. So that's classic Bigfoot. We were talking about behavior earlier. That's classic Bigfoot behavior. Observe, learn, take advantage of. Classic. And that's why if they habituate and come around, somebody's property, there's a reason for it. That's why they're getting it. If it's easy to walk out of the woods and down off a wooded mountain into a vegetable garden and help yourself, they're gonna. Why wouldn't they? I had a farmer, 88 acres up in Wisconsin. He had a big black walnut grove, and he says to me, all the black walnuts are up there, and he says, they're all of a sudden one night all the black walnuts are gone. I mean, they just came and harvested all of them, once overnight.
When you say, I went to my avatar because I'm pretty sure it's driving you nuts that I keep going in.
No, it doesn't bother me. It was kind of spooky. It was kind of cool.
I get that a lot, sir.
Like you were phasing in and out or something.
Yeah, that's my life story, sir. So the behavior, the pocketing is that's just the best thing. But out of all of the behavior, and I really want to get into the behavior, but out of all of the behavior, what is the most peculiar thing, other than pickpocketing, that you have discovered about Bigfoot that most people would not believe? And I ask this because we were talking about the woo and the flesh and blood. I used to be a flesh and blood, but there's things on the woo side that I'm just like that. I've experienced that. So I try to equal out my platform, because what you say this year, you would never do. Next year, you're thinking, I said I would never do that, but here I am experiencing it, So I do try to keep a broad spectrum. So with that in mind, what is the most peculiar behavior you can honestly attribute to Bigfoot that most people would not believe?
All right, very good question, Victoria. So yeah, I'll jump in on that. I think they're physical beings. People talk about them jumping in and out of dimensions and all that sort of thing. I can't comment on that because I never transcended one dimension to another and come back, so I don't know. But you can't just jump into that. That's too woo for me. But they have abilities that are beyond physical, common description, things that we do as humans or animals that we study. They do. There's one thing they do that, of course, minor birds, other birds will do, parrots, etc. But they're mimics. And they're very, very, very good at mimicking sounds. So I would probably list that as one of the. I mentioned before, they drain energy, and they take it out of things when you're around them. That's pretty unique. And that happens a lot around paranormal things, ghosts, other things. I don't know why that is, but it definitely happens around Bigfoot. But I would say their ability to mimic is one of the key learnings for me. And we're always, others that have done this kind of research, and we're out in the woods and we're used to different noises that you hear. We can tell the difference between a run-of-the-mill standard forest type of barred owl, say, as opposed to a 600-pound one. And when they mimic, sometimes the power behind it really gives them away. but I have heard all kinds of sounds from these things over the years, and I think they do it in a deception, deflection, is the purpose for them. If it gets us unnerved, stops us in our track, they can study us, or we look the other way, go the other way, sort of to get distracted. I think they do it for that, but they'll mimic it. I mean, not just wood sounds. This is why I say they're great observers too. But I have heard everything from circular saws to car alarms in the woods, and things that are out of place. Once my wife and I were hiking the trail, southern Wisconsin, years ago. We were hearing birds, and they were all, tropical birds sounds. And there was nobody else around. We're miles from anybody, and they were there. And I had already been off trail and had knocked and had some response, and they were walking with us. You could tell. They started to make these tropical bird sounds, and we were looking at each other like, "What? There's no birds that make these noises." I mean, it was so far off. You would never hear it in woods in that part of the world. Maybe if I was down in Ecuador, or but I'm telling, it was insane. I've heard mechanical sounds from these things in the woods. I don't know how they do it. Yeah, you know how you throw a rock and you hit a stop sign? You know what that sounds like?
Yeah.
I was with a group years ago, and we had them on a trail ahead of us, and this is in northern Georgia. And we're up on we'll go up clear cuts and 2 tracks in the woods and logging roads and state forest roads. We go up into those at night. We scout them during the day, but we go into places like nobody's at those. No one is on those things in the middle of the night. Okay, we are. That's research 101. But we heard it sounded like something was throwing a huge rock at a stop sign. And I'm telling you, we're miles from anything like that. In the middle of nowhere. How can they do that? There's no animal in the woods that can mimic that sound. They can't mimic. How can you mimic a car alarm? There's no cars anywhere near. So, and mechanically, I don't know how they do it, but banging and clanging, staple guns. I've got a habituation site over in Tennessee, and we have recorded staple gun sounds for years. And the only and I actually done some research on it. We found where this is happening down in Texas, a place down there too. I just think they're hearing them staple maybe roof shingles down or something, and so they're copying it.
So I'm glad you said that, because when we would go out in an active area in Robinson County, North Carolina, the whole time we were out, we would hear it sound like a hammer hitting a 2x4, but we were on the river, and you know how sound travels, but we would hear it every 5 minutes from the time we got out of our vehicles. And we would go really deep in the swamp sometime, and you would hear it maybe every 5 minutes. And I remember looking at my friend and saying, I don't know who is building what, because I didn't know. I said, but they're just hitting that nail like once every 5 minutes. Or yeah. I said they must have, drink a nice cold Old English 40 or something, because they're never going to get that built. But it weren't until I started learning that I don't know if there were every 5 minutes that were it could not have been related. I don't know, but to me it was related. It stopped as soon as we got back to the area where we would enter our vehicles at. It just all of a sudden stopped.
Yep. Yeah. And why would they do that while you're around? So let me ask you a crazy question. The sound that you heard, was it a familiar sound when you heard it? Did you or your friend say, hey, we've heard that sounds like a job site I'm on all the time, or anything? Was there any familiarity?
It sounded like I can only say it sounded like a hammer hitting a nail, like somebody was building a barn or something, and they were just lazy. But it also was the same area after a flood. We knew they were out there. They knew we knew, but after Matthew come through, and we were really worried about them, because we had people in the area that didn't believe in Bigfoot, actually would rib us. But when Matthew come through, his brother was on the deck, I guess securing furniture or just being stupid, I don't know. But he heard a really pitiful moan, kind of just unusual, just it's hard to explain the way it was explained to me. He said we'd been in the swamp. Literally lived in that swamp his whole life. We grew up there. And he said he'd never heard it before, and it was just pitiful. He said it wasn't a swamp sound. So when the water went down, we go out looking for them. And this area, I'd probably been in for maybe a year, and I had a snake skin left out in the same area that we knew they were out. And I always says, well, maybe they're just saying, hey, we're alive, leave us alone. I don't know. But I just always thought that was because it was the same area. We would hear the taps every time we went in. Tap, 5 minutes, tap, 5 minutes, tap. It's just crazy area.
Yeah, there's a guy, Chris Noel. If you read any of his books, he's up in Vermont. And I've done a little bit of it, got out in the woods with him a few years ago. And he had an area he went into regularly, and they would tap like drum sounds all the time. And so he would reproduce, he'd do it back at them and they'd do it, but he'd show up and all of a sudden tap, 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 tap. And they were upon arrival when he got there. Again, he knows who they are, they know who he is, but they were doing tapping and pretty vigorous tapping. Go ahead.
Well, I thought it was pretty cool because there was literally nothing around there but swamp and water.
Right. And I've heard them mimic like a drumming of a partridge, where they'll do their wings and beat their wings, flutter their wings. You can see it, but I've heard that mimicked. I heard that one night at about 2:30 in the morning out in the middle of the woods when it was cold in spring on an expedition. And again, I said earlier, it sounded like a 600-pound partridge because it was loud, and it came from 5 different spots, and it came from elevated positions. Didn't just come from down below. So it was coming from different places in the woods around us. Now they're doing something like this just because they can. So that tells me a couple of things. 1, there's more than one. 2, it's so out of place. It's not. 3, it's not a partridge. And 3, that they're fascinated with the sound they can make it, and they're just trying to do it to show us, hey, we're here and we can do something you can't do, ha ha ha, this sort of thing. So it didn't leave on a on bad terms. Tell you one other thing that happened at night, and this leads to another answer to your question, which is around these things. We talked about drawing of energy, but I think they can manifest energy too. But a lot of times we'll see orbs, and I went a couple of years in Siena, and then all of a sudden I saw tons of them different times in the woods. But why all of a sudden a ball of light will be floating around in the woods while we're doing what we're doing is beyond me, and that happens around Bigfoots. I had a Class A sighting in Colorado years ago. We were all 5 of us were all in a canyon looking at a cue ball colored orb that was floating ahead of us on a trail, and 2 of us turned and looked, and there was one standing right in the middle of the trail, about 90 feet behind us. That gets back to the don't look here, look there thing, which is something they're very good at. But the orbs type of thing, it happens. Not far. Well, actually, I was on an expedition this past spring, not far from Don Pierce's place. Actually, he's got like a fantasy land and stuff. I don't know if you've seen some of his evidence, but he's got all kinds of weird creatures down that he picked. So he's got some on video too. It's crazy. But we weren't far from that. And I mean, we had a couple of orbs come out of the woods, and I was with 2 other guys, and it came out on a trail. One stopped in the middle of the trail and elevated. The other one came right up the trail towards us, got in front of us, had gone about 40 yards, and then just right up in the air above us, took off. I don't know what that is. It was how they could do that. Is it some junction between physical and afterlife? It's a spiritual thing. Is it Native American? I've gone down every rabbit hole trying to figure this out. Can they call upon a spirit? Can they, because you see that sort of thing. I've gotten pictures of orbs in graveyards. Got a really good one up in Land Between the Lakes, and between Kentucky and Tennessee years ago. That's a spooky place too. But I've seen it. I've gotten pictures of them, around old cemeteries and things. But Bigfoot and orbs or some type of light manifestation that moves with intelligence happens a lot. And it's topical. Watch Skinwalker Ranch. I like that show. It's pretty good, but they get a lot of energy manifestations. They've got some very good orb footage. I don't know. I don't know what it is or why it happens, but it happens around Bigfoots a lot.
So you're in Colorado, and I'm just trying to get in your head. Because you seem really level-headed.
Well, thank you.
You're in Colorado, you see an orb, you turn around. Is extreme enough to have a Class A sighting. But on top of that, you have a orb you are experiencing. How are you taking that in? How do you accept that and file it in your mind and in your research?
So I've had a few Class A sightings. I would say the three most notable ones I've had, it was another individual or individuals with me that saw the Bigfoot too, same time. So I've got witnesses with me. They weren't solo. How do you take that in? Well, it is a little bit of disbelief. I've come to just accept this stuff and not, I don't get knocked off my block when it happens. I don't get defensive, I don't carry a gun anyway, but I'm not getting ready to attack or running, although I've had these things chase me out of the woods before, but I kind of stand my ground and try to get through it. Now, the one I saw in Western Virginia in the mountains back in 2018, two others of us saw it too, but it was massive. And I mean, I think 8-9 feet tall, black, huge. It was coming down a ravine towards us. It stopped at a tree and it went right across the ravine. And we saw it run right across in front of us. The size and scale of that got me. And I got zapped. And whether it was from that one or some other ones, I felt like I had a piano on my back all of a sudden. And I had trouble walking. So that witness encounter was unsettling. The one in Colorado wasn't. There was a woman next to me. She saw the one right in the middle of the trail too. We had to go back from this spot, back where this Bigfoot was standing in the trail, and then we came back next day to see where it had been and everything. It was a little intimidating getting out of there. We're a good half mile in the woods, so it was a little intimidating getting out of there, but because they're all around you.
The one in Colorado, you had an orb added to it. I guess that's where I was trying to go. So now you've got your Class A sighting, but you got an orb there. So you're wild looking forward and you're, oh my God, looking back. And so you are at a point where there's starting to be common denominators there. And so, and it's like I was saying, what we think we would never say a year ago, now we're saying, I know I eat my words a lot. I mean, it's just, I eat my words a lot. But what I would say years ago, I would never do or believe in. Now I'm like, I don't know. I've had this experience now, so I'm kind of eating my words now. So you're in a position where you got the orbs and you see the Bigfoot, but you hear that a lot. And so I guess that was a new chapter open.
Yeah, and you do those two things coinciding with each other happen. And I don't know cause effect wise how is the Bigfoot causing this to happen, or is it, part of me for a while thought it was sort of like periscope for them. They could send the orb around a turn and observe people and stay where they are in their position and be able to see folks. I that's one of my theories. I don't know.
Like a CI.
Like it's a scout. They send it out to look at things. I saw in Northwest Georgia a few years ago. I was with three other folks, 1:30 in the morning. And they were in this wooded property. It was an expedition, probably about 30 of us. But I'm with 4 deployed in this one area, and we'd had some activity, noises and things, howls in response to us and everything. Anyway, we went up a gravel road, went back into some woods to follow a creek, and a trail followed the creek. And so the trail was above the creek a little bit as we're walking and we're going along. And we were anticipating another gentleman was coming up from Atlanta to join us and was going to get there late, So I had kind of been looking over my shoulder. And I stopped while the other 3 I was with were kind of, one was walking ahead and the other 2 were going to the side a little bit. And I looked back and I said, "Oh, there's George. George is coming. I could see his light." I'm like, why is he walking? We got red headlamps on him. So I'm saying to the other guys, "Mark, what does he walk? Why has he got a white light on?" I could see the white light. Oh, now it's out. Oh, it's back on again. Here it comes. Why is he shining a white light on the trail to see? He's not shining it down on the trail to see where he's walking. It's just a white light. It's coming. Then the white light went off the trail, down over a creek bed, behind a tree, and along the creek bed, and disappeared. And then I realized, it's an orb. It was trailing us. It was following us. I talked it through. I talked the motion through. I didn't realize what it was at first. I thought it was a whitish old flash. A lot of times these things aren't blue light either. They're sort of like old headlight look. But here's this thing coming along the trail, and I watched this for a number of seconds coming, and it had me fooled. So I felt like it was observing us. It was behind us, keeping a distance. And when I stopped to really look at it, it went down off the trail along a creek and disappeared. Now, again, I don't know why that happened, but the purpose to me seemed to be observation.
I have never heard it put that way, and I think that is an awesome way to explain it or look at it. And so I might borrow that from you, sir.
Take it. Yeah, that's a theory.
I like that. South Mountain.
Yeah.
I know that is a hot spot. I heard which we go to one of my questions I always love that ask is coyotes and Bigfoot. But we had coyotes going off on there one night, and one of them sounded like a 600-pound coyote, and it just went to this guttural, just mumbled. It started out as a howl, and then I wish I could had to work. It was like, oh, then I mumbled.
Huh.
And I looked at my husband. I mean, it was literally probably 50 feet from us in the wood line. And I looked at my husband. I said, please tell me you recorded that. And he was like, South Mountain. What kind of stories have you got from South Mountain or reports?
So that's fascinating you say that. I have daytime going around South Mountain a bit. It's topography wise, I think the trails look challenging to go on at night. I'm not sure you can access them at night. I've thought about getting in there, even a small group, to do some Bigfooting expedition type stuff. It looks like it's a challenge to get around. However, I have a person that I mentioned earlier up towards Linville Gorge who is aware of a number of happenings around South Mountain. Sightings, hunters, people have run into them in there. So I do agree with you. I think they're in there. There's water. There's water source in there, some good spring-fed water. There's, the mountain itself and the trails around it. Some are very tough. If you look at the ratings in the trails, kind of hard. Did you get around there at night, or
we were at night? We went down like this gravel road. We went past that old church. I don't know if you know the area because this was the first time I went there, and we were like in a landing right on top of the mountain.
Wow.
Yeah, and there was like one camp place there, and I'll talk to my husband and get the exact location, and I'll email it to you.
Okay.
But he did the driving, and I was eating corn cheese and drinking Pepsi, so I'm sorry I don't have the coordinates.
Now, I'm fascinated with it. I know there's activity there. I have not gotten in there to research. I've done daytime scouting at it. I'm curious about it. There's a big horse barn area there, stable kind of area. I thought that might be a good place to get at night and hang out. The trails look rugged for, sometimes you gotta be careful when you do this kind of thing at night. Go falling down a 100-foot ravine and, 2 in the morning, you're probably in trouble. So you gotta be careful. But if they could, Bigfoot move quick, and up and down hills and things don't bother them. They look like they're gliding when they move. So I think they're fine. But I would like to get in there. I'd like to find the right spot to get to, because I think there's got to be a family or a colony or tribe of them in there.
Yes, sir. I will get up with my husband, and I will make sure you get the location we were at. You cannot go wrong there. I promise you.
All right. That's great. I have another research friend of mine up in Raleigh. He's been wanting to get in there, so I'd like to get him and get over that way. I was going to ask you, because where you are too, there's been a lot of activity in Uwharrie over the years. I just think I was doing some scouting in there last year. I think it's overrun with ATVs, and there's just too much. There's people everywhere, and our trails for four-wheelers everywhere. And although historically there's been some good activity, I'm thinking, I did hear somebody told me about a Class A there not that long ago, but I just think if there's a Bigfoot group in there, they're remote, secluded, or on the edges of it now. I don't know what you think.
I think they were pushed out. We had to go way off the road, and we found a washout that we could actually drive down and get to. There are no campsites around it. It's really pushed back far away. There's a water source there, and it's secluded. We were out there a few weeks ago, and we had several hours of nothing but silence.
Okay.
We went up a few hundred yards, hiked up a few hundred yards away from where we had to camp at. Whole forest was alive.
No
And
kidding.
we had some crazy activity there, but I'm like you. I think people ruined it. I
Yeah.
think people ruined it. I enjoy, and I was going to ask you going down toward the coast, and I know you don't know where Robinson County is because we discussed this, but where I grew up, Robinson County on the Lumber River, they are there. But they are not like I hear people describe. When I talk to a lot of people in North Carolina, I get that they are athletic built. They're not the huge patty type. They're the athletic, slender, useful muscles. I think that is what we have there from tracks that I found, and I'll send you those pictures.
Yeah, no, I'd love to see that.
I have some of the foot, so I'll send you a video of something in it.
Okay.
I'll make sure you get all of those. But that to me is I really hate to say it because then everybody's going to congregate there and ruin the land. But I also know in Robinson County, if you trespass on their land, they're not going to call the law. They're just going to take care of it themselves. But there are areas you can go in that we have permission that they are there. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And then you go back toward Bladen County and toward Bladen Lakes and all that. Perfect prime area. They have the dog type there. And I was going to ask you about the Dogman or the canine. I don't like to say Dogman, but the canine type creatures. Do you get a lot of reports of those? Can we go into that? Do you think that they are a separate species or a cross?
Yeah, I want to touch on that with you a little bit too. I had a report in Rockingham a year or so ago that was a very, very good report, and that was out, on your way a little bit too. But I thought it was quite good. I don't disagree with what you said earlier about the swamps and everything. I think they have families in the swamps. If you get in areas that have water and swamps, and they can, use it as a greenway to get from one spot to another, then I think you definitely have them. So my experience of swamps, waterfalls, that's where the activity is. So I would always pay attention to that. So I don't doubt what you're saying at all. And I think there's probably some good areas there too. People have a tendency to think, well, Bigfoot's, they got to be up in the mountains and the woods. I think they're going to be wherever they can get food and wherever they can be secluded and people leave them alone. I mean, they're in Skunk Ape in Florida and there's no mountains there. So, so you probably have some good areas out in that part of the world that are they're habitating in it. I have no doubt about that at all. They're opportunistic eaters. They're omnivores. They can eat anything. You mentioned berries earlier. They're going to, whatever the land's going to provide, forget the dumpsters. If they can eat it and sustain themselves, they're going to do it.
You are welcome to come out. Just bring snake boots. You are welcome anytime. I'll be more than happy to take you and whoever else that you trust that, and I don't take a lot of people there because, that's my homeland.
Yep.
And people have a tendency to ruin the land.
Well, they do. And, it's funny you say snakes. So I don't do as much bigfooting in this part of the world in the summer. Spring and fall, all the time. I get out and, winter too. But, up north, summer came around, I was out bigfooting all the time. But, here with the snakes, you wear snake boots. But, man, I was in the Smokies a few years ago in a group. A lot of times we'll get on a mountain road, switchbacks, the one that goes around a mountain going up, and we'll scout it here today, and then we'll say, well, we'll park right in this angle of the switchback. And because you get out and you can be observed, they can come down a ravine, see it from above. You could do a knock or a whoop and it goes down the ravine, so it carries. I like to do things that have acoustic resonance, so it carries to kind of, you know, and you can hear them if they're up above you and they knock or walk. You can hear them from down below. So I like to get in places like that. We get out of the vehicle, or four of us. As soon as we get out, copperhead goes right between us, right between our feet. Right, you know. So in the dark, snakes in the dark, you know, I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, sir, I agree with you, and I'll probably have a T-shirt there that says "No snakes allowed." So let's go into the canine type. I'm
yes.
sorry.
No. So what do I think's going on with that? So your question was canine and Dogman. What do I think? Second one is it a, you know, is it a derivative of Bigfoot, or is it a separate creature? I've taken witness reports on Dogman. One was a fly fisherman, another was a hunter. And both of them were very, very, very descriptive of what it was. I took another report last year. Actually, it was up in New Jersey. But what they described was this person described was not a Bigfoot, was a Dogman. I mean, the long pointed nose, pointed ears, you know, straight up. So you get the things I'm always looking for that you get with a Dogman is you get the pointed ears straight up, you get the long nose or muzzle type nose. The legs aren't straight. So especially if they're seen from the side, there's like that hitch in it. There's an angle in the leg as it comes down to the knee, you know, and below. And one thing that, you know, all the report people say when they look at when it's a Dogman entity, cryptid, whatever you want to call it, it's never pleasant. They look at you as much as say, I'm going to kill you. And they get the creeps terrible and they turn and run and get out of there. So that's always consistent with a Bigfoot or with a Dogman encounter. Yeah, Bigfoot, you know, people say, well, they saw it. Sometimes they're really scared. Other times it's fascinating, look human, yeah, that sort of thing. But it doesn't get this terror, doesn't take over, you know, always with it. It seems like with Dogman it does. I do not personally think it is derivative of a Bigfoot, although there are reports of them with a kind of a muzzle nose or a flat muzzled nose in North Georgia, eastern Texas, some in the Smokies. I got a random picture once. A lot of times if we're thinking we're being observed, and we were actually casting a footprint on a trail way out in the Smokies, I took some random pictures. Just I'll take the phone out and take in 360. And I went back through them, and then some Mount Laurel up in there, you could see sets of eyes, you know, in there looking down at us in a gray face. And I got what looks like a gray muzzle. You could see it. It's like you can see the eye, you can see the
whiskers?
Muzzle.
Have you ever seen something with the whiskers? Okay. You get a lot of the Dogman description almost like an Akita, because I used to say what I saw was like a German Shepherd type, but the years pass, and it's because I handled German Shepherds. But
okay.
But the more and when you see things, your mind's going to relate to what you know. It's self-coping.
Right.
But as years went by, I think it was kind of more of an Akita, like a Akita snout, or like, because I saw it from the side, but it was like an Akita.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
More so than the German Shepherds. I don't know. But so why do you think the people in the Bigfoot community can grasp that there's Bigfoot out there, but they don't want to believe someone with a Dogman encounter? Is it the name? I don't like the name, but
yeah, no, I guess I don't either. Of course, Bigfoot is kind of odd too, but
Little Force. I'm sorry,
yeah.
Force people.
You know, I don't know either. That's a good question. I think people have a hard time getting their hands around, you know, and because the Dogmen are typically like 6.5 foot tall, black, intimidating. But their descriptions are always pretty good about those 2 or 3 points I just went over with you. I think they have a hard time getting their arms around it because dogs are domesticated and people are used to them being on 4 legs and a pet and docile and all that. And, you know, here all of a sudden is this cryptid standing and looking at them like it's, you know, the fisherman that I saw when it was eating something. And they turned and looked at him from the side, and it said it never stopped, it never moved, never panicked. Looked at him like, "I'm going to kill you," sort of thing. And I think they're intimidating. It's hard, I think, because it's scary. The Dogman things are always scary. I think it's really hard for acknowledgement there. Not that Bigfoot isn't. It's not a jolly Yeti running around the woods out there like it is in a beef jerky commercial or something. But Bigfoot, on the other hand, is tall, lumbering. People can almost get their arms around it because in culture and society, we kind of know what that is. You said something about, well, your Akita and German Shepherds, you have a tendency to put it together with what you know. I mean, we have Chewbacca in the Star Wars movies, and there's a abominable snowman, abominable snowman, and there's all that kind of people are. It's part of culture. Bigfoot is a Dogman is not.
We were conditioned to accept it.
Yeah.
From the Yeti, from the abominable snowman, from Chewbacca. So there's a seed planted there that was acceptable.
Yes. Yeah. Where I think now they're both cryptids, so not acknowledged by science. There are other ones out there too. You talk about Don. Don's got some crazy things in his property too. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I'm trying to get Don on the show.
Oh man, he's showing me pictures and video of things that, those crawler type things that are white out in Bakersfield, California. He's got some of those in his property and stuff. Oh my god. So,
there's no telling with Don. He's just, I love Don.
I know, I do too. So he had a movie career too. Make sure he tells you about that. So.
For real.
For real, you can ask him about that. You pull that out of him when you get a chance. But Don's still very open-minded. One of the things I like about him, I've been out in the woods with Don a lot, or been lucky enough to do that a few times. Don's open-minded, and his observation quality is very good. I was with Don with a group of some other folks out in the woods a while back at a spot. I'd like to stop at it because it's near a WMA. It's in the mountains, South Carolina, but we heard voices in amongst us. Don is standing right next to me. There's like 6 of us spread out apart in the dark, and we're hearing voices in between us, and there's nobody there. So I've had some experiences like that with Don. And Don, I said, well, how can that be? And he goes, sounds like it came from right in between us. I said, yeah.
He's so nonchalant.
And I'm like, I'm not a ventriloquist, Don. And he's like, me neither. Something's here, and we don't. And then they said spirit. And I said, yeah, maybe it is a spirit. The good thing about Don is and I'm kind of involved to this too, is accept it. Stuff happens, accept it. Document it, write it down, journal, keep track of it. If you can record it, fine, but accept it. It is what it is. And a lot of researchers get to a place to get very dogmatic, very dismissive of any type of evidence, experience, and just blow it off. And I'm not that way. I don't believe everything in the woods that you hear or see is a Bigfoot. I really don't. But if you can't explain it, and behaviorally or evidentiary, it falls into categories of things we know about cryptid. Maybe that's what it is. I think you could say the same thing about Dogman. People are seeing Dogman. There's a North American Dogman Society or something. I think I was a member of that at one point. But, people do see this thing, and the sightings and descriptions are the same.
So I'll say this: what I saw was not bulked up like the thumbnails you see. It was not bulked up like that. I'm not saying people don't see those kind. I don't know what I saw, but I hate the term Dogman. I wish we would call them canine cryptids, something else. But I think that name has tarnished a lot of credibility with the people that have had experiences, and it's really not fair to us. So going back to North Carolina, what is a hotspot in North Carolina? Is it active compared to other states? Is it an active state? I'm spooking you out with my monitor again.
Yeah, no, I think it is. I think the biggest issue we have is we don't have enough people investigating to get out and document them. I think I might have 1 or 2 other people in the state that are doing some of this now. I'm carrying about a dozen cases now. I've got emails or texts out to 4 or 5 people and waiting for them to get back to me. I just talked to one the other day. I'll say the other thing I'll say too is we kind of talk with other researchers around the nation, and for whatever reason, Bigfoot activity is up right now. Over the past 6 months or so, I would say there's more of it. I don't know why that is, and it isn't just because everybody's running around with a cell phone in their hand now. That's been people who had cell phones for years, but we had a period it wasn't too active, and for the last 6 months or so, it is. And some of them are really good. I was at a witness location not that long ago, and people on the property, a woman came home, driving down into her holler, if you will, woods on each side, 2-track. Sees this creature reaching out of the woods, and a huge arm reach right out of the woods, right out of the mountain laurel, and throw what she described as like a chimpanzee-looking creature up into the trees above, up about 7-8 feet in the air. And she saw the arm reach out and toss it up there. It's got to be a Bigfoot parent and a baby. She's got a water well there that's enclosed in a small building and off the side of the property. I think it was right near that in the wood.
Wow. That was North Carolina?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's in Western North Carolina. What I'm saying is that's a very good report. I spent time with the property and everything. The description is outstanding. It's not something, they weren't looking for Bigfoots. She's had some other activity in the property. I could tell you about where they're tossing things, on their deck. They had a abandoned generator on the property, big generator you'd use for supplemental power, and then a big beehive in it. So she was out there all bundled up trying to clean it out and having a hard time with it. Didn't really work out. So the bandit goes in the house. Comes out the next day. The beehive is taken out of the generator. It's laying on the ground right next to it. It's all stamped flat.
Wow.
So that's classic Bigfoot behavior too. It's sort of like they adopt you sometimes if they're around your property and they're observing, as I said earlier. And so they saw, well, she's having a hard time with it. We'll take care of it. And they did. Because there's a water source. They're accessing the water source. That's a good witness report, and that's North Carolina, this part of the world. I've got another active spot too, not to be quick and jump around, but I got a real active spot about 45 minutes northwest of Asheville, and I can't say exactly where it is to you, except that I got some of the best footprint evidence I've ever seen. And been on the property at night and literally had eye shine, eye glow, talking, heard it recording, knocks, banging on metal out of the woods. I had 4 of us there on this property, and they continue to develop the property. It's going to be a big retreat type place. But
oh man!
But the property, yeah, well, it's probably all right. It's huge, but they're on the property. Bigfoots have been there in the woods, and they're around now. So, and it's active. So. You say to me, what's an area? I think Linville Gorge is active up in that part of the world. There's always seem to be some crazy things going on out there. There's a Brown Mountain Lights always, but I think that area is very, very active. But I knew a researcher in Asheville I met years ago told me he used to track their movement up and down the Blue Ridge Mountains at different times of year based on witness reports and things. And I know there's a lot of reports, people seeing them cross for whatever reason, the Parkway. So, the Blue Ridge. So do I think there's one active area more active than others? I don't know. You said something about maybe they've been driven out of Uwharrie. That could be coming west. I've had activity between there and here a few times. It seems like I've picked up a number of reports, not as far north as Blowing Rock or anything, but I have picked some up in between.
You get a lot on what, coastal?
Sometimes. Real good one, and it was South Carolina coast a couple of years ago. Very, very, very good. Positive Class A sighting. But again, I think they're going wherever you can look and see where the game is, especially deer, and they're going to be around wherever that is. And they're going to be where crops are. Wherever there's a lot of crops. You mentioned cornfields earlier. They're going to be around that.
I'm going to ask you about eye shine, but I'm going to say this first. BFRO posted a report in Robinson County at exit 7, and my sister lives in that area, and I called my sister up. My sister doesn't believe, I told my sister, I said, hey, Robbie, you had a Bigfoot that literally come through your backyard. I just want you to know that. Because literally the path it took, boom, where the witness said he seen it, it's my, I think the porch light the witness saw was my sister's porch light. And she told me in that phone, she goes, don't you ever call me again and tell me there's a Bigfoot walking through my property. She went click. She didn't want, but I shot. Hear some people say red with anger. Hear some people say greenish white. What's the deal with eyeshot?
Have you seen it?
Mm-mm.
Okay. I have multiple times. I think red is youth or juvenile. Typically, when I see red, or I've seen it's lower toward the ground. I've seen the yellowish. I saw 2 sets of red down below at 4 or 5 feet in the air, and 2 sets of yellow standing behind it, just above it.
Wow.
I saw, and that was an area we had all kinds of activity. There were 4 of us that witnessed. There could have been a dozen of them moving around. They were in the shadows and everything. We had recordings of them making noise and howling, talking to us and everything. So that we knew they were there. So if you know they were there and then you see the eye shine, I think it just validates. So I don't know how, if it's eye shine, eye glow. I'm not hung up on that. All I know is, there's a color and an eye sighting. You can see her eyes. Sometimes you see one, which is puzzling to me. Not, you could be looking at it and there's one.
Wife might have got it with my black eye.
Yeah, or maybe they're looking from the side. I don't know. But what's that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've seen yellow, bluish white, light blue. Not seen green. I've seen red. Amber gets reported a lot. Amber color gets reported a lot. Now, it could be a couple things. Could be as they're younger, the color emanates differently than when they're older. It could be attention and interest level. Like a certain type of stimulus gives you a different color. It could be that the color changes with age that they give off. It could be the color that emanates or comes from them has to do with their surroundings and illumination. I don't know what it is, but that is something that it's not a debate for me. I've seen it. I mean, I've seen the eyes looking at you, look away, move up. Now, in Iowa years ago, I had a group and we saw them come down on top of a canyon a couple 100 feet up, and they moved it across the canyon above us, and we could see the sets of eyes right next to each other. And then one would get up, move over around the next one. Well, 2 or 3 of them were looking at you. I've seen them blink the eyes, so I know it's coming from the eyes because I've seen, 2 sets of eyes blink, seen them turn away, look back at you. So I know it's in the head and it's part of the eyes. And I've seen it project. I saw, 2 of them walking, like I could see the shadows of them walking up a trail, and like a lightish blue was coming out of the eyes almost onto the trail in front of them. So it's real and it's purposeful and it's useful for them. And they've got it.
Wow. So I've had you on for an hour, 30 minutes. I don't want to keep you forever because you're so fascinating to speak.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
But I always tell people if you want to increase your chances, cut through the kudzu vine because it's like little tunnels. Small game is cover, and it's a medicinal herb. But in closing, I guess my mind is going back to the arm reaching out and pushing the baby, the little one back up in the tree. That is so parental. That is so parental. And I think sometimes we forget when we're hearing the horror stories, and I do believe people have negative experiences with them. Do not get me wrong. I do believe people have positive experiences with them. I told someone the other day that boundaries are important if you're trying to cohabitate. But where do we go wrong as people when we're out trying to have an experience?
So I like the way you frame that, because sometimes people will say to me, what do you want to do? How can you increase your chances to have an experience? I actually have a whole slide presentation on this, believe it or not, on how to increase your chances. So, by the way, and by the way, I will be at the Rowan County Public Library this Saturday coming up. I'm doing a presentation. Rowan County, so that's in Salisbury.
That's right there at the Virginia line, isn't it?
No, I think it's northeast of Charlotte, a ways.
Okay,
so,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I haven't been there for that. But I'm speaking this Saturday, 3 o'clock coming up. So I will be there presenting on Bigfoot because they asked me to. It came through the BFRO, got a hold of me, and so I will be there. But what do we do wrong? So I think one of the problems we have as people, and I've talked about this, so I'm glad you asked, is we have iPhones, iPads. We think the world just revolves around us, and we're in our own bubble. And so all of a sudden you're out in the woods and you're walking around and you think the world, you're staring at your phone, which is number one. So you're not observing. They could be right next to you in the woods. And you're loud. I mean, one of the things we're very loud, very self-centered, geocentric. And we get out in the woods and stomp around and act like, like our stuff doesn't stink. And that's a problem. These things, yes, we're disruptive, we're loud, we're messy, we leave trash, we chop trees down, we start fires, we get drunk, we throw stuff around. We're obnoxious, in a pristine environment that they have quite often. And, that's a problem. So, if you're out researching and you're out there with good intent, as I said earlier, if you hear something, you suspect it's Bigfoot or whatever, and you want to reply in the same tone, the same way, and stop and listen. I like to stop, turn 180 all the way around, put your arms out, talk to the woods, be inviting, be cautious, but don't be egocentric, and don't be yelling at whatever it is, throwing rocks in the woods, throwing logs and sticks, banging on things with baseball bats. I mean, I just don't think any of that works for anything. I've never heard anybody say, "Oh, I went out there with a bat and I started banging away at trees," and they all respond. It just doesn't work. And if I'm a Bigfoot, I can see that, especially from on high. I look down and I see people doing that. I'm either going the other way, probably is what I'm doing, or I'm zapping them to get them the heck out of there, or I'm throwing a rock at them, whatever. But you just don't want to participate in that. You wouldn't want somebody come into your house, jump up and down to your couch in the living room and break things. So. I think people need to stop with that. You just can't run out there and be disruptive. I don't really care for that.
Now, when I go out, Rick, I carry a firearm because people are crazy. I don't trust people. Does that diminish my chances? Because I'm not one of those. I'm one of those that, I worked law enforcement 17 years. I literally forget I have my firearm until I need it. I don't flash it around. I do open carry because, I'm just one of those people. If you see me open carry, you probably aren't going to mess with me. Does that diminish my chances, or do you think they can read the energy?
I think they don't. If you're not discharging the firearm randomly in the woods, shooting trees like Ted Nugent or something, I think you're fine. I don't, we always say be a hiker, not a hunter. Mm-hmm. If you're out in the woods, I think that's the best approach. If you think they're around, tell them, I've got a firearm. It's for protection. With bad people, it's not for you. I'm not here to be disruptive with you. I'm not here to hunt you. You can't hunt Bigfoot. I'm research only, and it's for my own protection. That's it. I have no intention of using it. I said a few times in this broadcast, don't be afraid to talk to the woods. I think you need to, it at least conveys honesty and, you're open about things. But you do that and things seem to calm down. I was with a group once years ago. I had a guy who was packing a gun, and it was the first time he was out, and he was a little bit, not in attack mode, but he was
gun happy or.
Yeah, a little bit ready. And, there was two women and me and him, and this was at night. It was cold too. It was in UP of Michigan, and he got zapped. And I mean, he was immobilized, and I didn't know he had the gun. And the three of us were fine. And, and I go, "Where is it coming from?" He's like, "Over there, that tree." And it was a stand of trees. So, well, maybe we got one over in there. I said, you're not carrying a gun by any chance, are you? He goes, oh, yeah. I said, oh, okay. So I walked toward the trees and I said, look, he doesn't mean any harm. He's never done this before. He's just scared. He carried a gun with him. We're not going to fire the gun. Nothing's, please stop. Please let it rest. He means no harm. He means no harm. And I'm not kidding you. It all calmed down. It all of a sudden, within 2-3 minutes, he was like, oh, I'm all right again. But he was not in a good way. He was hyperventilating and headache, and all of a sudden couldn't walk. And I'm thinking, I got to get this guy out of the woods, and I think it had something to do with the gun. I really do. So, more than one. I had a witness last year on the gun topic that he had one of these things right in front of him, pitch black in the dark. So it was 8.5 feet tall. He said to me that it was on his property. He had his gun drawn, and he said it was so close to him he could smell its breath.
Wow.
And it was looking right at him in the face. I've got pictures of him with the gun in his hand pointing right at it. And I said, what did you do? He said, I heard something in my head said, don't shoot, or I'll kill you. He said, I could hear it over and over. I will kill you. Don't shoot or I'll kill you. And he said, I just shook and I never discharged the weapon. And he said that it took off. It went back to his property in the back, but the thing was standing right in front of him. It was massive. It was like 8.5 foot tall. And, I don't know that a gun's going to help it.
Wow. So, first of all, let me apologize to you. But while I extend you my apology, at the end of every show, I try to give a moment to pay tribute to someone. So I would like to give you a few moments to do that. But I want to apologize. At the beginning of the show, I told you I would refer to them as forest people, and I try to refer to them to what the guest refers, and I continuously forgot that, and I do apologize. Second, I would love to have you on live, because if you ever get a chance in your schedule, I have the best chat in the world that they ask questions not to ridicule, but to educate themselves.
That sounds great.
If you ever get a chance, I would love to have you on live. But is there anyone you would like to pay tribute to?
That's a good question, and I would probably have to think about it. I don't know. Right now, I don't know. I'm sure there's enough people out there I'd like to pay tribute to that have been influential to me or been beneficial to society, but without putting some thought into it, I'm probably not going to just randomly pick someone, if that's all right with you. But I like that question, and I'd like a chance to think about it.
That is the most hardcore, direct, and honest review I ever had, sir.
I really like that question.
Well, I try to at the end of every show. I have had a blast with you. You're very informative, and I'm going to have to figure out how to send you the video of the thing I have.
I'd love to see it.
Because it's every time I try to send it, it's too long. I have a version where it's slowed down, but every time I show that, people call me a hoaxer, and I tell people, if you think I'm hoaxing, you pay for the polygraph. But here's the deal: I'll take it, and if I pass, you have to get out of the Bigfoot world forever. And it is what it is. But I'll try to send you both versions of it. I'll send you the footprint that we got, and I'll send you the snakes and the snake skin. I'll get up with me. You let me know what date you can be on the show, and I will clear my schedule for you. And I want to thank you for coming on. Be safe out there. And once again, you're going to be in Rowan County Library this Saturday, which is this Saturday's the 20th.
Yes, the 20th. Yeah, I'll be there. It's the Salisbury, Rowan County Library in Salisbury, North Carolina. I'll be there at 3:00 talking to folks and have a whole slide presentation, take about an hour or so, and I will be doing that. So, and in my book, send me your address. I'll get you a copy of that. I'll send it off to you. And, anytime I do any of this, I always learn things. I appreciate, even what you were saying about some of these are scrawnier and taller kind of things in North Carolina. I just got some picture from two girls who took a picture of one of these things, and it's actually on a railroad track, and it looks like it's carrying maybe a baby, but it's tall and skinny and scrawny. So I appreciate it. Thank you that you brought that forward. It's got me thinking.
All right. Well, thank you. And where can we find your books?
Etsy, go to Etsy, ETSY, the Etsy store. I Know Squatch. You can take a look there. And we've got a lot of good merchandise. We always try to depict Bigfoot. We do all original artwork, but we try to depict it in a way that people have seen it, peeking around the tree sort of thing. So we have a lot of original artwork, different shirts, stickers, hats, challenge coins, all sorts of things. And I Know Squatch, I'll be in Gatlinburg week from Saturday too. I'll be vending at that. So we'll be at that show too coming up. Smoky Mountain Bigfoot.
27.
Yep.
All right. Well, you're awesome, Rick, and thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful evening, sir.
Well, thank you, Victoria. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me. Enjoyed the conversation and the questions.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.